This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and today we are talking World of Warcraft Midnight, and we are talking the biggest new feature of World of Warcraft Midnight, the new playable class. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, that's great, Taliesin, yeah, nice video. Has a new playable class actually been confirmed for the next expansion, or is that just something you completely made up? And okay, no, there is no confirmation that there will be any new playable class in Midnight at all. But that's what makes this such a great video, because I'm sorry, new expansion announcements, speculation, and fake leak season has been very disappointing so far, and I want to do my bit to get it rolling. But all of this is not based on nothing. The last playable class to hit the game was back in Dragonflight, which means that Midnight is absolutely in line for one, especially if we want Midnight to recapture those exquisite Legion vibes, but in purple, which we absolutely do. And not only that, but there have been some very compelling rumblings and clues about the community, and so while we can't sit here and tell you that, yeah, there will be a new class announced at Gamescom later in the month, I think it's fair to say that a sizable part of the community is low-key expecting one. And we've now narrowed down the potential candidates to 3 serious prospects, which I think stand a very good chance of being your next fave. So join us as we discover the new playable class in World of Warcraft Midnight. Okay, go, 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 go. Void Demon Hunter. Okay, so we're starting small with something that is not even an entire new class, but rather a new specialization for a class, the Void Demon Hunter, which the community has decided will be called the Entropy Demon Hunter. And the reason that we're talking about this spec at all is because there is some pretty compelling evidence that it might really be on its way, with clues scattered about the new 11.2 zone Koresh. First, there was the announcement stream of the patch, which featured our first glimpses of the new zone, dungeon, raid, super big boy final boss, and blink and you'll miss it shot of an optional council fight in the Manaforge Omega raid, a trio of demon hunters, one of which, Adaris Dustblade, is distinctly voidy in nature. Wowhead were all over this within minutes of the reveal stream, speculating that as the encounter featured one Havoc Demon Hunter and one Vengeance Demon Hunter, this third purple dude could well represent a new third specialization for the class. Not exactly the strongest evidence by itself, granted, but when the patch then hit the PTR later that day, very quickly a void-themed metamorphosis model and corresponding icon was data mined, which, okay, can probably be reasonably explained as being related to the void-themed demon hunter boss that we were just talking about, but could also be interpreted as further evidence for this being a new playable option. Added to that, there's a whole non-campaign questline in Koresh where you follow the Void Demon Hunter boss dude Adaris Dustblade and his Void Elf buddy Leona Darkstrider as they work together to make Adaris into that voidy demon hunter, laying a strong in-game grounding for, that boss fight again, but also potentially void demon hunters being playable. It's not as compelling as the evidence for the new Evoker spec in Dragonflight was, granted, but the player base is definitely very hyped about it indeed, with multiple images of the new imagined spec doing the rounds on social media, well and truly bringing fake leak season back, baby, something for which I am incredibly grateful. Thank you. And yes, sorry, but this is fake. The options on the specialization select screen are always in alphabetical order, except if the new spec was introduced after this new spec selection menu appeared in Dragonflight, in which case that new spec is always placed on the right, as is the case with Augmentation Evoker. This entropy option in the screenshot doesn't follow either of those rules. I think we can quite safely discount it. If anything, I think the most likely outcome is that all of this will end up enabling a broadening of race restrictions for demon hunters, with void elves being able to don the blindfold and get tatted up. But what if all of this really is setting the scene for a third demon hunter spec getting introduced in Midnight? How would that fit? And how would it work? Well, it definitely scores highly in being very thematic for the Midnight expansion, with its promised void attack on the Sunwell. A more tricky question is, what would a third demon hunter spec actually offer players that the existing two don't already? They currently don't have access to a healer or a ranged DPS option, but that's kind of for good reason. The fantasy of a demon hunter is quite specific. They are agile melee fighters that go slashy, jumpy, chargy. You could say that a ranged spec would be based on throwing glaives and other spiky things at baddies, and that's cool, but I mean, demon hunters already do that. You don't need to invent a new spec just for throw glaive, and I think a range specialization would just end up feeling like something that was made up for the sake of it and which doesn't really fit. Likewise, a voidy demon hunter healing spec is literally insane. Let's be real, you're talking about a class that purposely burns their own eyes out. So consumed are they by their thirst for revenge. They don't care about healing, and even if they did, how are they going to do it? Throw medicine-coated glaives at their allies in the hope of cutting them just a little bit? Just enough to get the drugs into the bloodstream, but not enough to, like, dismember them? I'm going to rule out an augmentation style support option for the same reasons, meaning that if there is a new Demon Hunter spec on the way, I think it's got to be another melee DPS, giving Demon Hunters the same overall loadout options as warriors, essentially. I like the idea of the new spec using two-handed weapons, like we see some of the Illidari wielding in Legion. A Void Demon Hunter with a scythe would be sick, and maybe their playstyle could reflect that bulkier, heavier weapon option. They could also have Void-themed sigils, like maybe a black hole one that slowly draws enemies into it, like a slow-motion mass grip, as well as that cool Void metamorphosis form. All totally feasible, if not quite as likely, in my opinion, as just enabling Void Elf Demon Hunters, like I say. The other slightly pricklier question should probably be, would a new Demon Hunter spec really be enough? I know it's a very popular idea and a much requested addition to the game, but is it really going to scratch that new playable class for a new expansion itch? I'm not sure it would. And as a box feature for a new expansion, I can't help but feel that players would overall be disappointed by it. No, if we are really looking at options for a bona fide, fully fledged new class for Midnight, I think there are far better candidates elsewhere. Tinker. For those of you that have been following this channel for a while now, you might well remember the very bold prediction that I made during BFA, that the Tinker was a nailed-on, dead-cert, obvious next playable class that was absolutely being planned and foreshadowed in the game, and which you could basically bet your entire house on arriving the following expansion. And I don't know if I've ever actually said this out loud since, but yeah, sorry to everyone that lost their house on that one, because of course, that next expansion turned out to be Shadowlands, and it definitely did not come with a Tinker class. I was very wrong. But I still think that the work that Blizzard did to establish Tinkers as a potential class back in the days of Mechagon could yet find a use in Midnight. Because fam, I think Tinkers could be back on the table once more, and this time I really mean it though. As a recognised class in the Warcraft universe since Warcraft 3, there is a number of absolutely huge advantages that a potential Tinker class has over any other option, and one of those is that they can thematically fit into just about any expansion, and it makes sense. Don't take my word for it, try it. Take any WoW expansion, pretend that a mech piloting Tinker class was added in that expansion, and it totally works. Burning Crusade, we're heading into space, so obviously we need to take our most cutting-edge technology with us to stand a chance against the Legion's machines. Tinker. We're heading to Northrend, where we will encounter the Titan Watchers and their advanced technology, including a mechanome in a literal mech suit. What can we learn from them? Tinkers! Oh lord, how will we ever defeat that huge dragon? Oh, did we mention you get playable goblins this expansion? Tinkers! The Horde and Alliance bring their conflict into an otherwise peaceful new content, their vehicles of war destroying the pristine environment. Tinkers. Oh shit man, the Iron Horde have massive machines way in advance of what they're supposed to have. Luckily we have some machines of our own. Tinkers. Biggest Legion invasion ever, literal spaceship battles. Fell Tinkers. Big faction war where both sides have literal Tinkers fighting for them. Tinkers. Ironically, the one expansion in WoW's history where this class doesn't fit at all turned out to be the one expansion that I predicted it for. F you, Shadowlands. But with Midnight, it totally fits again. A lot's been made in recent short stories about the rebuilding of Silvermoon, as well as, of course, the two new player housing zones that we're getting, one of which has strong visual elements of the goblin-centric Ashara zone. I think there's a real theme of renewal and building for the future from what we we know of next expansion. Tinkers, with their fun and useful technology, would vibe perfectly with that, as the boffins and their machines are repurposed from construction to combat as the void threat looms. On top of all that, there's the ominous spectre of Titan technology creeping into the World Soul saga throughout the War Within, with the Coreway and the Earthen and the Titan World Soul Prison. You could make the Tinker class even more relevant by having them draw on those Titan influences to empower their machines further. What I'm saying is, there is a big old tick in the expansion themes box for Tinkers. The other thing I love about Tinkers is how easy I think it is to make them a unique and fully rounded class with a DPS, a tank, and a healing spec, because it kind of speaks for itself, right? A ranged DPS spec could use bombs and mines for damage and crowd control. It could deploy turrets to do some of its damage. It could do a metamorphosis style big cooldown where your character jumps into a mech suit to really F shit up. Healers could send out repair bots and drones, maybe deploy med stations that pulse out healing like totems, send out Mechatalk style escape pods to fly players out of combat like a priest grip or evoker swoop. They could zap out shields and protective domes. The possibilities are endless. And tanks, oh my word, tanks could suit up and stand toe-to-toe with enemies way above their weight class with the power of steel, landing huge hits and making sure their shield generators are always functioning properly to survive the big hits. In a playable sense, they absolutely offer something completely new to players to justify their existence as a new class, way more than Void Demon Hunters, let's be real. I legitimately think it would be fun to have only the small races be available to play this class. Gnomes, Mechanomes, Goblins, Vampira, Dwarves, Dark Iron, and Earthen, but I think that the absolute secret weapon for Tinkers is the new customizations that you could add. In the same way that when you start a Worgen, you also create on the side your human version of the character, when you create your Tinker, you should be able to also create your mech suit from a range of options, which is a fundamental part of your character. Your tank jumps into it for all combat, and which the healing and DPS classes will use a bit more sparingly, but still plenty. And what an awesome sell that is, right? Come and play Midnight, everyone. You get to do player housing, and you get to design your very own Gundam of your dreams. Blizz would sell like a gabillion copies, and we know it. So yeah, the hype score for Tinkers would be huge. They have a natural heritage in the game and would slot right in seamlessly. They offer cool new customizations and unique play style over 3 very obvious and natural feeling specs. I sincerely think that as a class concept, Tinkers have it all and are a natural choice for Midnight or Last Titan or basically any other expansion you want to put them in. Bish bash bosh, job done. But there is one more candidate that's only really become a serious consideration for me very, very recently, which never really fitted before, but now makes perfect sense, and which I cannot stop thinking about as a new class for Midnight. It's bold, it's imaginative, it's a fantasy RPG staple that I never thought we'd see in WoW, and I'm going to tell you all about it just as soon as Evie's told you something.
Hey everyone! You know what I love? A good break. Some properly quiet, low-key time. I'm kidding. I hate downtime, which is why I have kids, and why I love Squarespace, where it's uptime pretty much all of the time. Thanks guys for sponsoring this video. Now, I know everyone's thinking about 11.2, but the number you should really be looking out for is 7.1. No, we're not going back to Karazhan here. I'm talking about Squarespace 7.1. If you didn't know Squarespace had patches, well, now you do. And now you know where some of its latest and greatest features have come from. There's loads to celebrate about 7.1, but some of my favorite features are the highly detailed and easily customizable product detail pages for selling your swag with style, and the practically unbreakable Fluid engine, which is a godsend for the non-coders among us, as well as the drag it and drop it enthusiasts. If you happen to be running 7.0, or God forbid, 5, never fear. Squarespace has got you covered with a very clear and easy to follow guide to getting your upgrade right. There's even a video guide to walk you through. And if you're ever in doubt, the Squarespace Help Center is there, and it is an amazing resource covering all bases of web design, domains, commerce, and more. There's even a guide, I'm serious, called What is Squarespace? Probably should have led with that one. Nothing beats a good patch, and this one is no exception. Why don't you head to squarespace.com/TaliusandEvitel, where you can enjoy all that 7.1 has to offer with 10% off your first purchase of a Squarespace website or domain. Or if you prefer, just use code TaliusandEvitel, and that discount will be all yours. That's squarespace.com/TaliusandEvitel. Squarespace really is better than ever. Can't wait for 7.2 now.
Bard. Towards the end of last year, there was much excitement and internet content about a Blizzard survey that was reportedly sent out to random members of the German-speaking World of Warcraft community, outlining potential new classes that Blizzard were apparently considering adding to the game and gauging player reactions to each. I don't want to bang on about this too much, but the alleged survey is obviously as fake as shit, which is okay. I love fake leak season. It's my favourite season after maybe season 4 of The Wire. That is also a very good season. So I'm not saying this survey shouldn't have been made or shared or talked about or anything, quite the opposite, but it is definitely clearly fake for lots of reasons. But the biggest giveaway is the fact that a fair amount of these potential new classes that it describes literally exist in the game already. So for example, if you said, hey Tally, can you describe a shaman to me real quick? I would say, yeah, sure. Shaman empower their weapons with the might of the elements to aid their allies, weaken foes, and create constructs to control the battlefield. And you'd be like, yeah, that is pretty spot on. But then I'd be like, psych, I didn't just describe an elemental shaman at all. I described the potential upcoming class, Battle Mage. And then you'd be like, okay, how would you describe Balanced Druid thematically? And I would reply with mighty spellcasters that can use the cosmic powers of the stars and gravity to deal devastating damage. And you'd be like, nicely put. And I'd be like, shut up, fool, that's not balance at all. It's the new Astrologian class from the survey leak. Didn't you even know that? Are you dumb or something? What's a WoW warrior like in just one sentence? Warrior uses spears and titan magic that are empowered by the gods for quick jumps and strikes. Cool, thanks. Lol, that's not warrior at all, you idiot. That's the new Celestials Lancer class, you absolute moron, you cretin. There are some original ideas in here though, like Tinkers. That's an awesome idea. There's one particular idea in this post though that I thought was awesome at the time, and which still lives absolutely rent-free in my tiny little mind ever since. Bard. Bard is my go-to class in RPGs. When we played a 3-year D&D game before the kids came along and ruined everything with their beautiful souls and unconditional love, I played a Bard. When me and Evie co-opted our first ever Baldur's Gate run-through in the best 30 days of my gaming life, I played a Bard, with lashings of Warlock. My first serious Final Fantasy XIV character? Bard. I just really like the standard fantasy bard archetype. Quick talkers who are often everymen or folk heroes who use their charm and wit as a weapon, along with their actual weapons, which are all really fruity things like rapiers and pistols, and who cast spells using an actual musical instrument as a focus as opposed to the more traditional staff or wand. The problem is, as I'm sure you know, bards don't exist even slightly in WoW. Nothing like the Bard fantasy has ever existed in the Warcraft universe, and that's something I've come to terms with, you know. At this stage, it's kind of too late. It would be really hard to add it to the game world now without it seeming very odd. With evokers, you could just say, oh yeah, they were asleep underground for 10,000 years, that's why you've never seen an evoker before. And that was still kind of weird, actually, but even that excuse doesn't work for magic people who play instruments. Oh yeah, actually there's always been magic people who play instruments, but they all went to a different school. That's why you didn't see them for the last 30 years, yeah. This fake leak, though, actually solves the problem in a really beautiful way that I love. They connect bard magic to the Radiant Song. Bards utilize the Song of Azeroth to cast mighty spells. The Radiant Song first became a thing towards the end of Dragonflight, when Jaina and Thrall revealed to each other that as the new world tree Amirdrasil took root, they began hearing a voice, a beautiful song calling to them, and they were not the only ones. Hearing the song is what brings grizzled Anduin out of hiding, and it becomes clear that it seems to be the Radiant Song of the world soul Azeroth herself. And this is obviously explained more and becoming more and more important as the World Soul saga progresses, but the main thing is we have now established there is a literal song of the World Soul that has suddenly been reaching out to people all across the planet. And yeah, maybe some of those people grow a beard and get all moody about it, but maybe some of them would be like, oh wow, that's pretty awesome. I wonder if I can focus this ancient song into magic somehow. I should use this lute and try. And boom, we have bards, but very specifically WoW flavored bards. It's so elegant and I would love it to happen. But what would that bard class look like? Leather wearers, obviously. Open to all races, obviously. This is a universal kind of class. Traditionally, bards are seen as support classes, using their songs to empower and buff others. So obviously, an augmentation style spec would definitely be on the table. Personally, I would be far more interested in bards as pure DPS and healer specs. The healer speaks for itself. I feel like the songs you sing and the spells that you cast would work best as a dot play style like Resto Druid, where your allies are literally enveloped by the music that then heals them over time. And as for DPS, I would love to see a range spec using not only their musical focus, but also guns and bows. Yes, I think one of the coolest things about ranged bards is that they could actually be the game's second ever bow wielding class. It fits the fantasy, and I just think it would be really neat. You could have a melee spec that uses a single-handed sword and has physical attributes based around cheeky dueling moves as if they were fencing. In every case though, whether they be wielding a bow or a sword, they would also have a special offhand slot for their instrument spell focus. Much of their spellcasting is going to be based around songs and music, so part of being a bard in WoW is going to be choosing your instrument. And the style of instrument that you pick is basically just cosmetic flavor. It can be swapped out at the class trainer anytime you fancy, but you'd be able to choose stuff like lutes and lyres and flutes and drums, and these items would be visible on your character when you did your spell casting. Loot drops could include new bard-only weapon appearances to collect from dungeons and raids and stuff, and Inscription could even get a new talent tree branch that creates music books that bards could then use to learn songs, which are then playable for people around them to hear, so you can regale your raid in between pulls, or the unsuspecting but definitely delighted citizens of Ogrimmar, or your new player housing neighborhood. There is so much cool stuff that this class could do beyond the obvious specializations that would make bards a genuinely brilliant addition to the game. And using the Radiant song as a source and explanation of their suddenly appeared power means that this is a class that is relevant to the current story, has a rich fantasy RPG heritage, a unique play style with multiple obvious specializations, and as an added bonus, off the charts RP potential. My heart absolutely belongs to Bard as a future playable race, and whether it be Midnight or Last Titan, which I get the feeling is an expansion where it might fit a little better thematically, I would relish seeing it become a reality. But what do you think? How likely are the three candidates we present as actually appearing in Midnight? Is there another obvious option that we've missed out? What would be the class you would most like to see? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us. Thank our patrons who give us their actual real life money to make all of our work happen. And seriously, patrons, as always, thank you. Because without you, there would be a whole lot less Taliesin and Evertel. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it, and remember, my name is Unoptimized Fool. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evie. Until next time, cheerio.